1900. A British governor walked into a room full of Ashanti chiefs. He wanted a chair. Except it wasn't a chair. It was the living soul of an entire nation. He had been warned what it meant. He demanded it anyway. 3 months later, his soldiers were trapped inside a fort in Kumasi, starving, sleepless, firing into darkness at shadows that never appeared.
Fire again!
The woman who put them there was 60 years old, a grandmother. Her name was Yaa Asantewaa. This is the story of the War of the Golden Stool. The British called it an uprising, a colonial disturbance, a problem to be managed. It was none of those things. It was a nation refusing to die, and at the center of it, a sacred object that 200 years of history had made untouchable. Frederick Mitchell Hodgson arrived with a list. Taxes, outstanding fines, gold tribute, compliance. The Ashanti king, Prempeh I, was already in exile, removed without trial in 1896. The British had formally annexed the Ashanti kingdom. They believed the Ashanti were broken. The chiefs listened. Then Hodgson made a fatal request. He asked for the stool. The golden stool, he said, I will sit on it as representative of Queen Victoria. The room went silent. Not the silence of men who've accepted something. The silence of men trying to understand what they have just been asked. Hodgson had ignored warnings from his own advisors about the stool, what it was, what touching it would cost. He demanded it anyway. 200 years of history lived in that silence. The year is 1701. Rival clans have been summoned to a clearing deep in the West African forest. These are not allies. They have bled each other for generations. Standing at the center of that gathering is one man, Okomfo Anokye, priest, strategist, mystic, or perhaps master illusionist. He does not give a speech about unity. He does not negotiate alliances. Instead, he summons a golden stool from the heavens. It lands softly on the lap of Osei Tutu. The man Anokye has already chosen as king. No ropes visible, no pulleys, just arrival. Modern historians suspect theater. Hidden ropes in the tree canopy. Careful staging. Historians debate the mechanism. They do not debate the result. The method did not matter. In the silence that followed, rival chiefs who had bled each other for decades bowed. Anokye stepped forward and declared, "This stool carried the Sunsum, the collective living soul of the Ashanti people. Not a symbol, the living spirit of the nation itself." One by one, every chief stepped forward. Hair clippings, fingernails, fragments of themselves, mixed into the gold. Different clans, different ancestries, different grievances stretching back decades. Now one people. The Ashanti Confederacy was born in that clearing with one unbreakable law. The stool would never be sat upon. Not by a king, not by a guest, not by an enemy. To sit upon it was to crush the soul of the nation beneath your weight. For 2 centuries the Confederacy held. They defeated the Denkira, the Guyaiman, 4 separate British military expeditions. Then came the 5th, and that is the object Hodgson asked to sit on. The Ashanti chiefs left without answering. Yaa Asantewaa did not leave. Oral tradition records what no British dispatch ever did. She walked toward the governor's wife, extended her hand, pressed chewed kola nut into the white glove. Red stain, deliberate, unmistakable. The British saw a greeting. Every Ashanti in the room understood exactly what had just happened. She had declared war without speaking a single word. An emergency war council was called. The men argued. Negotiate? Buy time? Wait for the exiled king? Yaa Asantewaa, Queen Mother of Ejisu, listened. She had watched British governors take the king, tax the chiefs, and rename the land, year by year. King, land, name, gone. Then she turned to her own men.
Is it true that Ashanti men are cowards? If you will not fight, then trade your loincloths for my undergarments.
She was 60 years old. She had no military rank, no formal command. But she spoke truth, and every person in that room knew it. She did not order a frontal assault. Instead, she ordered a siege. Every road into Kumasi was sealed. 6-foot walls of forest timber, dense brambles, stolen British telegraph wire woven into the barricades. This was not improvised resistance. This was military engineering. Hodgson and hundreds of British troops and civilians were now trapped. Then the drums started. Not war drums, death drums, unrelenting, day and night, without pause. The sound moved through the fort walls like something deliberate. A count, a warning, a deadline the British had no translation for. The British soldiers began to fracture, not from bullets, from the rhythm, from the knowledge that they were being counted down, from hunger, from dysentery, from weeks without sleep. Her warriors tied ropes to plantain trees, pulled them from a distance through the undergrowth, moving bushes, moving shadows. The British fired into the forest, again and again, burning through ammunition, shooting at leaves. Meanwhile, Ashanti snipers placed single shots, timed, precise, just enough to keep heads down and panic building.
Incoming!
On June 23rd, 1900, 6 months in, his garrison was running out of food. Hodgson escaped. He didn't march out. He crawled through swamp water, through undergrowth, covered in mud, barely standing. He made it out, but not on his terms. He left without the stool, because the stool was never inside the fort to begin with.
Fire!
While the war was fought above ground, another war was fought beneath it. A small group had carried it into the forest before the siege closed. It was wrapped, it was buried, no written record, no map, no witness beyond those the nation trusted with its soul. And above it, the forest grew back. The British searched for years after, offered rewards, interrogated chiefs, stripped rooms. They never found it. The stool was still buried, still safe. Yaa Asantewaa was captured in August 1900, exiled to the Seychelles. She never saw Ashanti soil again. She died there on the 17th of October, 1921. 3 years passed. Then they brought her home with full honors, not as a prisoner, as the woman who saved what the British never understood. 20 years after the siege, road workers were cutting through the forest. One of them hit something, still wrapped, still intact. 20 years underground. It had survived everything. When the British heard, they made the same mistake again. They demanded it be handed over. The Ashanti convened their own court. 2 of the workers had stripped gold ornaments from it, sold them to a Swiss trader for almost nothing. The Ashanti tried them, sentenced them, without British permission. This time, Britain backed down. The stool surfaced in 1921. The woman who saved it died the same year. The stool returned. She did not. The Golden Stool is in Kumasi today. At major ceremonies it stands beside the Asantehene, never beneath him. It has never been sat upon, not by a king, not by a governor, not by anyone. The Ashanti lost political independence. Their kingdom was formally annexed by Britain in 1902. But the Golden Stool was never surrendered. Yaa Asantewaa protected the soul of her people, even as she lost the war. Here's the real question, and it belongs in the comments. Did she win, or did she save the symbol while losing the nation? The full history of what the Ashanti built and what the British spent 2 centuries trying to possess, erase, and sit upon is on this channel. Subscribe.